Good evening and welcome to this edition of DeFacto Review, a weekly roundup of news and current affairs here in Mongolia with Jargal DeFacto and myself, Grace Brown. We're live on Facebook at V Television. You can also keep up with the conversation on Twitter, #DeFacto. Coming up on the program.
Beijing cancels planned loan talks with Mongolia after the Dalai Lama's trip to Ulaanbaatar. Candidates to represent Mongolia overseas are presented to the president. Mongolians mark the day they became a sovereign state with a surprise holiday. And the government issues a white Zud warning for dozens of towns across the country. We'll be taking a look at how they're preparing for temperatures colder than the Arctic.
Thank you for joining us. After much speculation, China has announced that it has cancelled a key intergovernmental meeting with Mongolia following the Dalai Lama's visit to the country this week. Beijing considers the Tibetan spiritual leader to be a separatist. China's foreign ministry said, quote, "The Dalai's visit has hurt the political foundation of China-Mongolia relations," and it also called on Mongolia to, quote, "respect China's core interests and major concerns." Jargal, this puts Mongolia in a very difficult position because it is an independent country. It can invite who it wants, but at the same time, it's heavily economically dependent on China. 90% of its exports go there. Is it possible for Mongolia to do what it wants while still benefiting from Beijing?
Let's see what exactly happened as de facto. Dalai Lama visited Mongolia, and the way how public had gathered together, thousands of them all around the country, and listening to his praying of Buddhism, Buddhist teaching, shows how Mongolians are Buddhist religious are in that sense. Many people come, and Buddhism is a state religion, or well, we don't officially say state religion, but majority people's religion is Buddhism, and of course, the spiritual leader of our religion has fully right to visit the country and to meet his prayers in spite of anything, and because, as you said, it's an independent country. And we should not please on that somebody else on one side.
And I think a lot of countries, and this is the reaction I've got from friends overseas, journalists overseas, are quite impressed that Mongolia has done this. As so many countries, including Britain, where I'm from, would heed whatever China said, but Mongolia has decided actually some things are more important than money, and Buddhism might be one of them.
However, the reality is China is regarding Dalai Lama as separatists, in spite of his statement. He's not. He has different agenda than the Chinese things, he said.
That's right. He said that he hasn't spoken about Tibetan independence since 1974 when he gave a press conference.
I am not surprised what had happened, but I'm more surprised the timing of this visit.
Yeah.
And the visit is just before several and series of events in relations with the large discounted loan from Chinese government.
That's right, a $4 billion
possible
loan, including currency swaps, including investment soft loans.
Which is enough to cover all current foreign debts of the country. But I read it like this. There is several certain power in the country which is not interested to receive those loans from China. So that's why I think this visit had happened now. Exactly at this time, and what was expected from China, they have cancelled up to 6 important trips, including parliamentarian groups, foreign minister trip, etc. So now question is, why? So the cancellation of the foreign debt or discounted debt loan from China, what does it mean for Mongolia? If they say if it went as it was planned, then we will receive, say, that amount of money to Mongolia. It does not change much the way we live, the way the crisis goes on in the country, because Mongolian economic crisis is mostly political crisis, or originate from the way how Mongolia is governed as a state. So if the money comes, we pay 580 million US dollar in March in the coming year, 2017. Then to the end, 500 million US dollar from the Genghis Khan bond, which is due to final payment back in December. So both will be paid by Chinese money, but nothing will be substantially changed from Mongolian perspective, because now from this to pay, now we are to pay to that.
But what is Mongolia's plan B, given that the Chinese loan is now up in the air potentially? I mean, even if the IMF gets involved, it still needs additional financing from other partners, including possibly China.
Well, the IMF was, I think, was considered to me by the government as a second part of this plan. First was the Chinese money. Now, since Chinese money is not coming, at least in the near future, now the closest one is IMF with the standby program. But I think this is to be in the place at least in the new year.
That's an initial
January
step, potentially
or in
450 million, but not 4 billion. That has to come from multiple places.
Yeah, probably initially $1 billion or so with the help of, with the contribution of other countries, including China, as China is now Chinese money is a part of now SDR in IMF basket.
Yeah.
So it may come through that channel, about that billion or so, but however, it is not 4 billion, you are right. And it is very severe, it makes severe the conditions when Mongolian International Reserve, we call it Mongol Bank, Central Bank International Reserve is, if net foreign asset is already minus. Why? Because it is consisting of Chinese swap money, or yuan money. So now there are 1.5 billion US dollar equivalent of yuan money. If it is not extended, or if it is required to get paid back now, Mongolia will be in even worse situation. So that's the reality. It is not good for Mongolian Tugrik strength. It will be more further devaluation. And
do you think we could hit 3,000 to the US dollar?
I think if things go as it is today, easily. It is easily. However, the further action of IMF, intention, and possible expectation of currency coming to the country may ease the situation. Otherwise, we were almost there about 2 weeks ago. And with the intervention of the central bank, they have decreased it to further 32 rigs. You know, I wrote an article last week about how to stop that plunge of Mongolian tugriks. And one of them was not to make this sort of strong intervention like last time into the market. Because they have sold over 70 million US dollar to ease Tugrik situation. And it should not be repeated again in spite of whatever changes in the rate.
I mean, really what is needed is more certainty for investors, right?
That certainty comes with, I think, free market rather than a state intervention.
Yeah. What about Japan and South Korea? Do you think that perhaps they could step up with the funding more now?
Most probably, in particular Japan, because the situation in Mongolia, if it gets to the level that we cannot manage, then like in several times in history since our democratic revolutions, Japan was always in hand.
Interesting, very, very interesting. Well, certainly something to watch closely. Moving on, Mongolian candidates for ambassadors overseas were presented to President Elbegdorj this week. They include Mr. Ravdan Bold as possible ambassador to Turkey, Nyama Narumbat as the possible ambassador to the Czech Republic, former Prime Minister Mensahn Engsaihan as potential ambassador to Sweden, and Mr. Sanj Bayer, also a former Prime Minister, as possible ambassador to the United Kingdom. Jargal, a lot of these names have controversy surrounding them. Could you tell us a bit more about these characters?
Yeah, public and social media and the mainstream media was discussing a lot about Mr. Bayar controversy, and public are expecting very clear explanation from either anti-corruption agency or the president office about three things related to Mr. Bayar. One is during his prime ministership, Hung Resources license for uranium mining, Hung Resources from Canada, was revoked, taken back to the government, and was given to Russian investors. And that caused international arbitration. As a result of that arbitration, Mongolia had to pay, and we paid already $100 million. So now, why and how, that explanation is not on public. Second issue is about controversy, having several properties in the U.S. under his children's name, and the people have a lot of speculation about that. And the third is he was claimed he is to be a key person on Erdenet, giving guarantee to a private company just against its loan to Standard Chartered, $100 million now, with the penalty interest rate altogether $190 million is to be paid by Erdenet. So there are three controversies where Mongolian public are truly expecting clear explanation from Mr. Bayar and the related authorities. Though Mr. Bayar said at the parliament sessions that he has nothing to do with that, he has no offshore account, etc. And he said that he asked an anti-corruption agency to check it, and the answer was he's clean. But that's what he said. But we expect the anti-corruption agency of Mongolia explaining very clearly on
to come out publicly and confirm this.
And if now he's approved by the president, that means Mr. President has that public supposedly the information public supposed to receive he got earlier.
Right.
So that's the expectation, and that's what the Mongolians are talking all week around this nomination.
That it should be a transparent process, particularly if this is the ambassador to Mongolia's third biggest trade partner, the UK.
Yes, and the second person, Mr. Inksahan, who was also prime minister, first prime minister of democratic government of Mongolia, 1996 till the end of 1997. It's only 1.5 years. But this man is, he was the strong competitor of presidential election in 2005. He almost was competing very close to Mr. Bayar, who became that year president of the country. And Mr. Inksahan is certainly a leader, strategic thinking, along with the Mr. Bold, who was the ambassador to Australia and the US before. Now he is regarded to be an ambassador to Turkey. So these are three undoubtedly very talented leaders. And I think it is not that difficult for them to run for embassy. But however, not easy thing is, unfortunately, a lot of nominees working at all levels of Mongolian embassies abroad are not always selected or nominated based on merit. There are a lot of political nominees. Unfortunately, many of them are not meeting the requirements of diplomats. So that's the general complaints from our embassies abroad. Hopefully these three leaders, where they go, if they go, they can solve that problem or make ease this problem, I think.
Yeah.
That's the expectation.
What are some of the key diplomatic and trade issues that they might face?
For example, UK or Sweden or Turkey, they are all, except I think Sweden is not that strong trade partner, but the others are, and along with China and the US, Mongolian government is measuring their success by the amount of foreign investments from their country to Mongolia. So hopefully towards this end, there are undoubtedly good players, I hope.
It will be interesting to see if they are indeed confirmed. Do we know when that will happen?
That's the president decisions. Most probably at this level it will happen after discussions of that level of parliament.
So we have
Because
to watch.
I think initially it is already agreed with the president.
Well, we will watch this space. Earlier this week, on Friday, Mongolians marked their Independence Day. November 26th, 1924, was the day that Mongolia became a sovereign state and adopted its first constitution. So this year, the holiday was held on Friday rather than Saturday because it's already a weekend. So, you know, this was clearly a very significant day. Let's talk about the importance of the day first, and then what do you think about it being a surprise?
Two surprises. Several years ago, Mongolia had decided to have a holiday on December 29th because 1911, December 29th, after just collapse of Manchu dynasty in China, under which Mongolia and Han China was existing under. And Mongolia that time, Bogd Han, kind of kingdom, had announced independence from Manchu dynasty. So that's why that, and after 2 days, Republic of China was proclaimed.
Right.
After 2 days. So we made it 2 days earlier, that's that meant. So this is regarded truly independent day by Democratic Party. But the December, the 1924, November 24 is a day of proclamation of People's Republic of Mongolia. That's mostly like it and celebrated by People's Party, who is in power.
The Mongolian People's
now
Party.
whoever comes in this from these two political parties come into the power, they announce that or this day is Independent Day, which gives us a thought why these political parties own our history. Why the country cannot come to one conclusion that this is the beginning of that 1911. One was the Independence Day.
Have two holidays, even better.
Or then we have three must have holidays because in 1992, we have proclaimed the Republic of Mongolia. So Mongolia Kingdom, then Bogd-Han Mongol State, then People's Republic of Mongolia, then Republic of Mongolia. You see the 3 days we have. So, but holiday is to be not for the sake of holiday. This is, if clearly informed earlier, it could be good business for domestic tourism, which was not the case.
Yes, that's right, because this was a surprise announcement. Just 2 days before, Cabinet decided to announce that this was a holiday. And while many who were celebrating Thanksgiving the night before were quite happy to have that next day off, it was inconvenient for businesses.
Yeah, if you talk truly about this independence, it was de jure, what we have talked now, was de jure, right? Announced officially. But de facto independence, even today, depends on our values. Our values are democracy, market economy, and education. These are three truly values that make Mongolia forever independent, I believe.
And so you believe that the
celebration of this Independence Day, whatever they agree, whatever day is the right one, but the Independence Day should be around these values, how much we value, how much we develop it, how strong we are on each of them. So then we raise several other many issues that we are facing today. So celebration or holiday is to be important day that makes better our life, better our belief in our future. Not so that one day earlier you announce it and you should don't go to your work next day. So this is ridiculous, and it should be announced the year before.
Yeah, so there should be more notice, and
of course,
employers can plan, families can plan, and they can market more appropriately. If that's
exactly what we would like to see.
Yeah. There are a lot of surprise holidays in Mongolia, or at least changing holidays, moving holidays. I mean, some of these depend on the lunar cycle, like Sagansar, for example. And that's coming up at the end of
Yes.
February, which is interesting because the rest of Asia will mark the Lunar New Year 1 month earlier at the end of January.
See, public holiday is very important because it's almost, say, 2% of GDP is created one day. So whether you take that day off or on, it's an important issue. If you take it off, so what is the compensation? What the other values are coming? So that in the future it is compensated. That's, I think, the way we should approach public holiday.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there will be more consistency and certainty with holidays in future. Turning now to the heavy snow we've been seeing here in Mongolia in recent weeks, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has declared 23 towns across 9 provinces in the country as being in a state that it calls a white zud. This is characterized by heavy snowstorms and temperatures colder than the North Pole. Some of these regions include areas quite close to the capital Ulaanbaatar, such as Dakhan, Henti in the east, and then way out west, Uvs, Hovskul and Bayan Olgi. So, Jagul, what are these places doing to prepare for this cold?
Okay, before a bit about more zud. Zud for nomads mean that there is so much snow that smaller animals cannot move. They stay wherever they are because the snow is becoming even taller than their horse. And horse, cows, they can move themselves more or less up to the half of their body level height. But then the remaining cannot eat, so they starve and die. That's what it means. And unfortunately this year again we have a lot of snow, and that's in the countryside the issue. And for that, they should harvest more grasses during the summertime. For the real issue is also coming in Ulaanbaatar city. And it's just always surprise every year because our city management is behaving like there is no winter.
Oh, apparently we're running out of salt to de-ice the roads. And
yeah.
It's astonishing. You know, the emergency, the trauma center has said that they're getting up to 350 injuries a day, and 60% of these are people who are just slipping on ice. So it's quite a concern. Do you think that the capital, where half of Mongolians live, is adequately prepared for this winter?
Of course not. It again shows that our management is not ready for the sort of even a heavy snow. It is in the country where we do expect and we do receive every year that much an amount of snow.
Right.
So it shows that we need to change the management method of the city. And every district, we have 8 or so districts, Ulaanbaatar city, and they are to be independently, autonomously ready for this sort of natural disaster. Mm-hmm. They are to have this proper, certain equipments, everything and on time to fight against heavy snow. And like in many countries, in your country, in the UK, in the US, the snow, as soon as snow comes, the local people fight with them from the beginning, right? Particularly on the road. So that means...
Well, they've mobilized students and soldiers and companies to get out and break the ice, which is interesting, and that's something that we don't see actually in many other places.
Yeah, because exactly to avoid this sort of situation of mobilization of everybody from their businesses, people pay tax to take care of this
public services.
This sort of situation. And the public service is not working in that way, 2 reasons. One, they are frequently changed. They're institutionally never being strong. From year to year, from election to election, they change the leaders of that institutions and funds, and they're restructuring the institutions. They never get ready for that. The other thing is we don't have proper the real estate property tax in Mongolia, which is the base for any situation, in particular in cities, because from this real estate tax, say 3%, 1% goes to maintenance of the area. And that includes heavy snow, a lot of rain, drainage, all these issues. Maybe earthquake.
Similar to a council tax in the UK, yeah.
So that should be there, and which somehow is not happening. In particular, it is not happening because state-owned real estate, they don't pay taxes in this country. And then the private sectors are very hesitant to pay the tax because they ask why they don't pay. Why I should pay for them to take care of the maintenance of the area. So this sort of management situation in the country need to improve, and nobody was working on. Nobody is working on that, unfortunately.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Well, obviously the capital has much work to do. But outside of the capital, for those herders who could be seeing snow levels that you're describing, pretty terrifying to think about, up to a horse's height.
Yes.
You know, how prepared are governments out there? Apparently the Ministry of Agriculture and Light Industry says we're at 82% complete in terms of winter preparation.
They say so, but we will see that in the way how many stocks, left stocks we lose or not lose, and what is the communication with them, because mostly a lot of places are just completely cut off from the road. There is no other way to reach them somehow.
Yeah, well, I'm confused because the ministry says that, like I said, it's about 80% ready. Then why are they also saying that 70% of these places will see heavy losses in livestock?
That's one of the controversies we will make clear down the road. It's always happening every year. They say that they are ready for everything, but the life shows that they are not. And life also proves that those who had prepared during summer for this sort of natural disaster, those who had prepared enough amount of grasses harvested, then those are usually always better off.
Right.
So let's see what will happen.
Well, one positive thing, I think we see some pictures of dog sledding, is that now the dog sledding season has officially opened here in Ulaanbaatar. So it may be very cold, but there is one fun thing that you can do out in the countryside. It involves being pulled along by huskies on a frozen river and a sleigh. Have you ever tried dog sledding?
Not myself, but I think Mongolia has a lot of winter tourism potential, provided that we have a good, nice, warm accommodation in everywhere. Small, it not to be a 5-star hotel, but it is to be tiny, comfortable, warm place with good shower or sauna. Then it can create a lot of potential to invite foreign tourists in winter too. I mean, in some countries even there is an ice hotel. People are coming and staying there overnight, paying $200 US. So there is, if compared with having this in idea, we can do a lot.
Why not? Why not here in Mongolia? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that brings this edition of DeFacto Review to an end. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope that you can tune in again next week. From Jargul and myself, Saichinam Rare, good night.
Thank you very much. See you next week. Thank you.